Hey everybody, and welcome to another Interstellar Modeler. This is now part 1 of the A-Wing Starfighter build. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get started. Rather than beginning with the cockpit, however, I'm going to go ahead and set that aside because I want to go ahead and prep the rest of these pieces for painting. So we have two tones to work with here. We have this off-white color and this reddish brown. So for the off-white, I decided to mix Tester's Camouflage Gray and Flat White. That's a 30% camo gray color, the rest being flat white. It matches the plastic pretty well. I think that's a good color as I compare it to reference pictures that I've seen. And for the other color, we'll be using the Vallejo's Marin Brown. Now, we're going to be adding some chipping effects and some weathering, of course. And so with the lighter tones, we want a darker undercoat to show through, and vice versa with the darker panels. So my plan here is to begin with Stynylrez Res Primer. That's a gray primer, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and get started with that. All right, so here we now have this tree all primed and ready to go. You can see that the one thing about this Stynylrez Res Primer, again, is it helps you retain a lot of the surface detailing. It doesn't obscure any of the detailing or the panel lines, as you can see. So again, I'd highly recommend it. It's really my favorite primer to use at this point, and it comes in a few different colors, this gray, white, and black. Alright, so I decided to go ahead and employ the salt technique. The reason being is I know I can attain a finer appearance to the chip and stippled effect that I'm looking for. This is a smaller scale model, so I want it to be finer in appearance. To review the technique, and I know I've done this a number of times now, but it's always fun to revisit it. Let me just summarize it. You take hairspray, which you can get this stuff at any drugstore. You don't have to buy any expensive hairspray for this in particular. But you can spray it into a bottle, and if you're going to employ this on a large area, you can then put this in your airbrush and then spray the surface. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just brush it on. Once that is in place, you can then take your salt and sprinkle it on and let that dry and dissolve the salt with water. Now, one thing I decided to do just to get a little finer appearance is to take the salt and grind it up a little bit more, just using the butt end of a bottle. That way you can get a little bit finer powder. Alright, so what I've done now is I've taken just a brush here and applied the hairspray to a few panels here on the ship, both the top and the bottom, and just lightly sprinkled some salt and am allowing this to dry. Now, I don't want to overdo this, and by the way, you probably could accomplish something similar if you just applied the light color and then maybe take a brush and lightly dab some gray onto various panels, but I do like the way the salt turns out, so I proceeded with this. And you can see how it turns out here. Now, if you rub really hard, you can rub more paint off. I didn't want to do too much, like I said. This is the bottom section here, and this is the top. Alright, one thing I want to briefly mention, I know I've done this in the past, but I thought I would do so again since we are using this particular brand of paint. This is the Vallejo Model Air. Now, obviously that indicates it is for airbrushing, however, it is still thick, so you do have to thin it. What I have found works best, rather than just using water or alcohol or anything like that, is to apply this thinner medium first. So you just put some of this into a bottle. Obviously, this is going to depend on how much you're going to be mixing or the amount that you're going to be making, but you apply this or put this into a bottle, then you mix this into it. It can be anywhere between a few drops to up to 10 drops, again, depending on how much you're making. And after I mix those two together, I add water to get to that milk-like consistency. I'm sure you've been told that before. And this combination works really well for me. Alright, so just for fun, I decided to go ahead and try this solution anyway, just see how it works. It's not as watery as it looks here in the bottle when you put it in your airbrush. It's a little slimier. But you apply a couple coats on there, allow it to dry, and then now I'm applying the Marin Brown color. And so we'll see how this works. Alright, so here we have our painted pieces now. And basically what you do is you take some water, which I have some water here in this little bottle, and just taking a brush and just applying it to the areas that I want to chip away at. So you can see I've already started on this. So all I did here was I applied some water, and for this particular piece I just took a stiffer dry brush here and just kind of brushed away at the surface, and you can see it's creating that effect. The other thing you can do is just use a toothpick. As you can see here, I started just with this area here. And again, the key here is not to overdo this. So what's really nice though is that the paint just comes right off. So it looks like it's working pretty well. So I have to say I'm pretty happy with this chipping solution here. The paint does easily come off once you wet it, but once it's dried it does stay in place, and it's allowing me some good control even with using just a simple tool like this toothpick here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the effect to these other pieces and we'll move on. Alright, well now that we have those other pieces painted, let's go ahead and move back to the cockpit. I'm going to go ahead and paint it a dark gray color, and then we will work on the pilot figure. Alright, so this is how the cockpit's turning out. There are about 6 pieces to this. You have the center console, a left and right side, you have the base, and then you have this outer piece along with the chair. So I painted it dark gray. I know the instructions say black, but I decided to go with dark gray instead. And took a toothpick, painted some of the instrumentation there, and dry brushed some aluminum testers metallizer. So this is about all set. We're going to go ahead and move on now to the pilot. Okay, so this is the figure that comes with the kit, and the painting guide suggests to use a greenish color for his jumpsuit. We've got kind of a off-white color there for his helmet, and we got some gray for his vest and gloves and boots. I'm going to go ahead and start painting the primary colors, and then we'll work with the shadows and the highlights. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so here we now have our completed figure. Now, let me begin by saying that painting figures was not my favorite thing to do. Honestly, I would just slap on the paint that was recommended by the instructions and kind of left it at that. Last year, I entered a model contest or show, and one of the things I was marked off with was, or were the figures. This was the 1/48 scale Space 1999 Eagle. And if you're familiar with that model, you look through the cockpit, there are 2 figures sitting there. And in my usual fashion, I really didn't pay too much attention to those figures, and they definitely critiqued the model with that being mentioned, that the figures were just really not very detailed. And so I thought they were being picky, but on the other hand, you know, they had a point. And so I was determined to get better at painting figures, so my friend Mark Fraley has really helped me out with this and gave me some direction on how to give more dimension to your figures. So just to review the process here, we put on the primary colors, meaning the colors of the jumpsuit and the gloves and boots and so forth. After those were applied now, I mentioned I was going to apply some highlights and some shadows. So the highlights, the way you want to think of these two things is you have to look at your figure and think of how light is hitting your figure, and you want to enhance that. And so with the highlights, you look at how, for example, there are certain creases and folds in the uniform here, and you want to figure where is the light going to be bouncing off of that. And so I picked the shoulders, the points here along the knees, these edges here along the gloves, and the vest area. With the shadows, it's not going to be quite as obvious with this figure because the suit is darker to begin with, but as you can see, I added some shadows here along the boot covers, and I did add some shadows along the uniform. They're just not very visible. The other thing is I also added a wash to his face just to kind of tone that down. The flesh tones were a little bit bright, and it also helps to darken up some of the detailing there on his face, so it gives it a little bit more dimension as well. So you have to look at this and you're going to ask yourself, are you really going to see that? And most likely you're really not going to see a lot of this detailing here. But I try to be meticulous with my work, and this just adds another level of detailing. And I've come to actually really enjoy this part of the process. So, and it's a challenge for you. So that's the way I would look at it. And when you look in that cockpit, at least you've done that amount of detailing, And, you know, if you're entering a show and the judge is really looking closely, they will probably see some of that detailing. So I think it's well worth the time to invest. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, but before I go, I wanted just to show you one thing that has helped me a lot with painting smaller figures and just detailing in general. As I've gotten older, I've needed some help with magnification, as we all do, and this is one piece that I got from widgetsupply.com. It's not very expensive. It comes with a light source that you can turn on and off here. It's powered by AAA batteries. It comes with 2 levels of magnification, one that's mounted here and another one that you can snap into place. So it's something that, again, helps me just view a lot more detailing and make my work a lot easier. So I'd encourage you to consider something like that. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me here on my YouTube channel or at interstellarmodeler@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.